Thank you. What was it? The name that you gave her? Anastasia?
Anastasia
Yeah,
with the
thank you,
850 credit score.
For sure. Thank you, Anastasia, for letting us know we can record. Listen, we just wrapped up episode 200 of the podcast, and it was the special one, man. We had Danny on, needed to have him on, and then his wife jumped on, and we had a deep, intense conversation about Cuba, communism, Venezuela, and the whole thing. And then there was a little cameo from Jackson, their son, not his son, because it's their son. It was a great show, man. What did you think?
Yeah, man. It got I was able to keep from getting choked up because what we talked about, it touches home. For both Jenny and myself. She's talking about Cuba, I'm talking about Venezuela, and really how interconnected those two countries and governments and regimes are. It was a great show, man. Great conversation. A lot of people won't connect with this unless you're Cuban, Venezuelan, or grew up in South Florida, or maybe in another Latino community throughout the States, because everywhere else in the US, I think there's a big disconnect with what's going on in those countries. And we'll talk about Cuba now, that moment that's happening in Cuba right now, and the disconnect, because people don't really understand it. They just don't get it. Unfortunately, it's just ignorance. It's not their fault.
Right.
They just haven't lived it or have family that has lived it. But it was
they have no connection to it
to talk about it.
Yeah.
They don't have a connection to it, and like the big example was what happened 21 years ago with Elian, who should have stayed with his estranged family here. His mom died going 90 miles from Cuba to Miami to get him over here, and the surveys that were done were that most people in South Florida thought that he should have stayed with his family here, even if he didn't really know them well. While the rest of the U.S., this was back 20 years ago, thought I think that the same poll would be now. Over 75% thought that he should have been sent back with his dad because a child needs to be with his dad. So that shows a disconnect, that they don't understand what was really going on in Cuba, and generally you would say a child needs to be with his dad, but that situation is completely different. So it shows a disconnect with that plight, the Cuban people, the Venezuelan people, and how the rest of the country doesn't get it.
Listen, I hope for this episode, the people do listen to it and they take the time to really hear what Jenny, when she talks about the spies and how little people have and what it's really going through, and how disingenuous the whole talking point of the embargo is, right? Because it's almost, that embargo talk is giving a cover to the Cuban government and how they're going about it, right? Because that if anything, that embargo helps the Cuban government say that, look, nobody's here to help you. It's just going to be us, and this is all we're going to give you. You should just be happy with it. It was like, for me, as a bystander in a way, because my dad's Cuban, but my dad really never talked about Cuba. He just shunned that up. You know what I mean? He didn't want to ever talk about it, so I never really knew. Even when I'd ask, I was curious. It was I don't know half of me, And it was just interesting, and I learned a lot listening to the podcast, and I hope you guys do too. Episode 200 was way better than I ever could have imagined it being, and we're just gonna keep going and keep growing, man. So, Jonathan, as always, my brother, 120 something episodes deep doing this with you. Couldn't imagine doing this with anybody else. I want to thank you for joining me when you did and helping me grow and helping the show grow. And we got 200 in the books, and here's to 200,000 more. Who fucking knows? One day we'll catch Rogan when he has another bad hair transplant or something.
I hope so, man. Thanks for just putting it out there to bring me on the show and just give me the opportunity. I when you started doing the show solo, I would listen to it, and I didn't think we'd end up doing the show together. So we were lifelong, we've been lifelong friends, 25 plus years. But yeah, I didn't think that we'd do the show together. So the fact that you kind of threw that out there, I wasn't expecting it. I never saw myself being on the show with you, but I'm glad you did. Yeah, it doesn't seem like we've done 120 episodes together, 120 plus. It's crazy.
When you think about that, all these conversations we recorded and all the bourbon we've drank and all the shit we've talked, that we still have more shit to say. We have more things to give to opine on. Just get ready for the future, bro, because it's gonna get fucking wild. You got anything else? But this intro about to hit right.
I'm glad that you said opine. I'll give you credit for that.
Thank you.
It's a big word for you.
It's my calendar word of the day, you son of a. Yo, what are you doing right now?
The big V. Look, man,
right, man. Let's just jump right into this shit. So
I made my wife wake up and drive me there anyway.
you,
Is it major?
What's up con eso? What's up con español?
¿Qué pasó, papá? ¿Cómo estás? Any questions?
Now, when you bought that sweater, right? You just go, fuck it. I'm going full Mr. Rogers. You've tuned into the Man Chatter podcast. We are back, episode 200. Could not do this show without one of my best and closest friends. I hate that I say that every time we record because now it's out there in the internet. My boy Danny had to jump on the show, man, for episode 200. Welcome back to the show, man.
Thank you guys for having me. Let me be the first to congratulate you guys on number 200.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
That's
Hey.
a big number.
Appreciate it.
Man. Thank you, man. Hey, let's try not to say anything too wild on this one that we have to delete it right after we post it, though, huh? Let's make sure we don't do that.
Did that stay? Did you put that back on? The one that you had to delete?
No, I deleted it. I took it off the internet. Yeah, that exists only in the conversation you and I had. Yeah.
I'm gonna need you to send that to me because I wasn't there for that show, just so I can hear how bad it was.
Also, it was just one part.
We must have made it, by the way.
It was just something that we said that we decided it was best not be on the internet.
Yeah, exactly.
Because for episode 200, we have a lady who I'm going to name her. Her name is Anastasia. She's got an 8 billion credit score. She's got a black card. I mean, this lady on Zoom that says you are recording or you're no longer recording. That's I'm creating an avatar for her.
Just creating
her name's Anastasia.
She's
got
the
an 8 billion credit score. For sure, right?
Yeah, so what is
she British?
I thought you were talking about an actual person.
It is an actual person.
I want to meet this person.
Here's the thing, Danny. With a credit score like that, we'll never meet them, right? Like it's very much Jeff Bezos. You'll see a picture and like an image of what they might be, but that you'll never see these people. They don't actually exist.
Yeah, she's that person that paid $28 million to go out in space with Jeff Bezos. So we'll never meet her.
Fucking crazy. Hey,
I didn't know that he was half Cuban.
I didn't know that either till you said that.
Hey,
is he half Cuban?
Leave it to a Cuban person to fucking take advantage of the government and all the benefits they give them, and then call it capitalism.
Goddamn, we starting early. All right. Okay.
Goddamn, I'm waiting. No? Damn, that was perfect. I don't hear anything. Shit.
Well, I found out that he was Cuban because everybody's asking where's he at. He's very silent with everything going on right now.
Yeah, and he's gonna be,
but look at him. He is like a Cuban Mr. Clean, right? For sure.
He will not.
Yeah, he does have that Cubanazo look.
He will never. Yeah, definitely. I mean, he juiced up later in life. That's 100% Cuban.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
for sure.
I'm not
sure. I didn't know he was Cuban to begin with until just recently.
Well, let's go off the theory that he is Cuban, right? It kind of makes sense that like he would find a way to get out of somewhere else, right? Like he's like, look, hey man, look, I left like my family left Cuba. I'm kind of all set on Earth. Let's find out what this spaceship be like. Look, we were all raised in Miami. I think this just should be the topic of the whole show and like give the whole dynamic and perspective of it, right? We'll talk about it through that lens. We all grew up in Miami. We have a very different perspective than what me and John have now, right? Like Danny, you still live in Miami. John lives in Ohio. I live in Central Florida, but do you not hear my greatness? I'm actually giving a good segue.
So is this like the 2021 version of like being a balsero? Like he's just fucking got a $20 billion rocket ship to take him out to space?
$28 billion, yeah. And he got $10 billion from the government.
Whatever it costs.
So it was like 18, right? So he only put 18 in because the government gave him the other 10, which is fucking crazy. But growing up, we all grew up around Cubans, right? Like I'm half Cuban. Danny's married to a Cuban. JV, you're short and grew up around
very
Cubans.
Talented.
No, that's not the
way.
way.
Hey, look, Miami culture is Cuba, right? Like
yes.
I heard it. I didn't need to hear it on the Laboratory show, but that's what it is. We grew up around it, but I mean, it's everywhere in Miami. We grew up with that Cuban culture, like everyone else, Colombians, Puerto Ricans, but it's very heavily influenced by Cuban culture.
All right, and I'm sorry to talk, but I had to look this up myself because I didn't want to keep talking about this guy being Cuban if he wasn't.
God damn it! Don't ruin it. I already looked it up. I know the truth. It's a
Okay.
stepfather. Damn
Yes.
it. It's a stepfather. I know. No.
But still,
It's his
I know.
stepfather, and his stepfather adopted him.
I was gonna make that
Did his
correction at the
stepfather-
end, but I just wanted to keep going with it.
yeah, we were good.
I just wanted to keep going with the immigrant.
With the
by title.
inaccuracies, this is
I'm
episode 200, baby. You gotta come correct.
Hey, immigrant mentality, man. You know what I mean? You got to keep
That's
grinding.
right.
You got to push through all the bullshit. Look,
Okay, so he's not really Cuban.
but his stepfather adopted him. Like, how long was his stepfather?
At the age of 4, so he kind of grew up in a Cuban household.
But his mom is like Cuban by injection, right? Cubana putting. I'm not even gonna say that. Everyone knows what that means. We'll just leave it at that.
Look,
Hopefully, he's not Cuban by injection, but his mother is.
we could talk about it through the perspective of like not being Cuban and like being separated generations after, right? Like Danny's Colombian, Jonathan, you're Venezuelan, and Colombian, and somewhere in there Puerto Rican as well. You know what I mean? So like all these things, so like we have a different perspective. But like you said, growing up in Miami, it's Cuban culture, right? And I don't know, Danny, if you've been watching Le Batard, he had a great conversation with Billy Corbin, and he said something that I hadn't really realized. No. He said that Miami is what Cuba would have been, right? Because Miami's Cuban culture, right? Like if Cuba doesn't get destroyed with communism and the government completely taking over, what you see in Miami with the culture and the liveliness of it is a totally different world. Like I could tell you, living in Central Florida, there's nothing like Miami. Like as soon as you leave Miami, it's the rest of the United States. Miami is its own single entity, right? So with everything going on in Cuba, like I'm so far away from it now that like it doesn't resonate with me the way it would have if I'm like seeing marches and stuff like that.
Right.
Well, actually, I had a question for both of you because you guys both live in pretty white places.
Yeah, very white.
Is the what's going on in Cuba a top story where you're at? Because over here, it's obviously everywhere.
Tampa and Orlando.
Right?
So I'll give you the Florida thing, right? Like Tampa and Orlando, there's been some marches because there's a heavy-ish Cuban population. Not so much like Puerto Ricans kind of take over Central Florida. Just what I've seen, like in my own anecdotal shit. So you'll see some marches, but nothing like you'll see in Miami, obviously. But for the most part, it'll be like a 2 to 3 minute segment on the local news about like how this sheriff or this police department isn't going to arrest them or is going to arrest them. But that's about it. And they'll just say like, oh, they're civil unrest.
Going to arrest them for what? For protesting?
Yeah, for protesting. Because like if they stay on the same thing as like what we saw last year, right? Like if they stay on the sidewalk, it's fine. But like once they start interrupting traffic, they'll be arrested and so on. And this is even during the day.
Right, because DeSantis, he wrote that into law just recently, right?
Right, which is like the anti-riot bill, which is kind of like an anti-freedom of speech bill, which we could, you know what I mean, and do the whole thing. So yeah, like I've seen
lots of.
You should protest. I think you have the right.
And that anti-riot bill is going to be interpreted by whomever, depending on what the demonstration is, right? If the demonstration is that something that you agree with, or whomever is in power or makes decisions agrees with, then maybe it's not a riot. Maybe it's okay, right?
It's a peaceful process.
That's how everything goes. If it's something that you don't agree with, then it's a riot and it falls under the anti-riot.
Last week, the Palmetto got shut down for 4 or 5 hours, and the Palmetto is major heavy on the traffic here in Miami. It's a very important highway, and it was shut down for 4 or 5 hours, and it was peacefully done, and I was surprised.
Now, what's that
was due to the what's going on in Cuba or demonstrations.
Mm-hmm. So Jonathan, like what Danny said, how about you in Ohio? Mm-hmm. Anything?
No, one, I don't watch the news, right? But if I hear it, and I mean, I'll watch the news, it's national news, not at the local news, you're right? Where it's so far removed from it. Everything here, it's always going to be down to black and white. I'm in middle America. Ohio is the Rust Belt. The Cuba thing won't be covered by local news. It's covered by, CNN or
MSNBC,
whatever, the news that come on at 6 o'clock. That's what it's covered by, but not the local news. That you don't really hear that over here. It's not an issue. Not that, I mean, there's a Latin Hispanic community here, but it's in Cleveland, and then there's a small pocket of it. But the majority of the population in Cleveland or in Ohio, it's white, and the issues are black and white issues, not really other minorities.
Well, I mean, you're Venezuelan, So, we all know what happened in Venezuela.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still happening,
Continues
but when
to
it
happen,
first started, it was getting a lot of attention.
Yeah.
Were you for or against the U.S. getting involved?
It's tough, right? Because once the U.S. gets involved or anyone gets involved, it's whatever comes after, it'll be like, well, the citizens didn't do it. Whatever gets instituted is a puppet government of the U.S.
Middle East,
and then you can go as far long down that line as you want to, right? That whole story, it's happened in other places. But the people in Venezuela aren't armed. There is no right to bear arms. They are not. There is no right to bear arms.
Yes, okay, no yes, legally, but they have.
They have. Yeah, no, they have. They get them, obviously. Yeah, they get them. But so do the people that live in those same communities that are armed by the government to put down the people that get weapons illegally. It's just
right, but
because how everything works in Venezuela and Cuba as well, right? It's the same thing, right? Oh, well, we'll ration you more food. We'll give you this. You have more perks. And the gangs within those neighborhoods are, and I'm not saying if as an outsider, I'm saying it as someone that has family who's lived it, who has family there, that's lived it, that's left Venezuela, that has taken video of crazy shit that's gone on, who live around the corner from a place that's used by the La Guardia Nacional and other, which is like, we'll call it National Guard, but then other like close to like CIA, sort of like their intelligence community, that they use it to like just grab people, put them in that house for weeks or days or months, whether it's kidnapping or torture or whatever. And maybe they release them, maybe they don't, maybe they get put in a prison after that. Probably the same shit that goes on in Cuba, although surprisingly, I mean, people in Venezuela, millions of people went out and protested the day of the labor, we'll say Labor Day here, which was like sometime in April. People were crowding the streets. Eventually, the government responded with all these trucks, and they fought back. But I don't see that government being toppled unless there is intervention from the U.S. or from an outside force.
Which would only ever be the U.S. It would only ever be the U.S. Nobody else is going to do it.
Well, I mean, I feel like the United Nations should get involved in some of these things.
The UN, right, as a group.
Yeah. Because, I mean, obviously, I'm not up on politics as much as, a lot of people are. But I would figure that when you see the genocide going on in some of these countries, that you just as human rights, just to get in Cuba, obviously, I've never been there. I've wanted to, but I've never been there.
Right.
All I know is what my wife and her family tell me, right? And obviously other Cubans, because I live in Miami.
Right.
And the stories they tell me, the pictures and videos that I've seen, it's they're violating their basic human rights. They don't have food. They don't have food. They get what was it? It was like 6 eggs a month. Right?
You just come on.
You go
pull up a chair, Jenny.
That's put up a chair. Breakfast.
Yeah.
Shit.
For real.
Right. My brother eats 6 eggs for breakfast. Yes. They get 6 eggs a month. If they go into a store, they'll be lucky if they find soap or shampoo. They can't go into restaurants. They're not allowed to. They're not allowed to start their own businesses. When I talked to Jenny about going to Cuba, she told me about this place called, I think it was Granadas. Where right. So it's really nice to go and visit, right? But we can go with the family. But when you go with the family can't come in with you, right? Only the tourists are allowed inside those restaurants and those hotels.
Yep.
And inside those restaurants, hotels, they have good food.
Yep.
But the people of the country are not allowed.
Yeah, they get scraps.
Right. They don't even get scraps. They're not allowed to eat red meat. Right? If you get caught eating red meat, you get in trouble. Right? You can't say anything. It's hard for me to wrap my brain around that this actually exists in the in the world and so close to the United States.
90 miles.
Like when I picture shit like this, I'm like, how is this possible? How does this happen? And I mean, I understand why the United States won't get involved, because I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of collateral damage once you enter there with the whole ties to Russia with Cuba and stuff.
And Venezuela ties to China and Russia as well. I mean, Venezuela, just like, I don't know how Cuba is, but Venezuela is an entire like narco state, right? That whole Mexico and US border, that's been surpassed by the Venezuela-Colombian border as far as the most dangerous. I mean, you're being Colombian, you might be aware of it, but I was born in a little town that's 30 minutes from a city in Colombia, Cucuta. And so I was 30 minutes from Cucuta. I was born like pretty much out in the mountains, like right there.
So you're on the border.
Right on the border, out in the mountains. And that border right there, it's rough. It's one of the most dangerous because things going back and forth between Colombia and Venezuela, whether it's arms, whether it's drugs, a lot of drugs.
There's a lot of Venezuelans that have gone into Colombia now.
Unfortunately, a lot of them, especially the people that have money, unfortunately, they waited too long to leave that country because no one wants to leave their country. Everyone has these memories and images of Venezuela, what it was in the 90s and the 80s. And I'm speaking from like, having family there who were old enough to know the days of like capitalism and success and living this good life and all the resources that they had. And they have this longing for that to come back, that it will come back. But shit, Chavez went into power in what, 98, 99, I think. Like, this was the year before, so I think he went into power in 99. And then it got even worse after his successor with Maduro. It's just, it's rough, man. I mean, look, you talk about people not being able to eat red meat in Cuba. In Venezuela, they had containers of meat, chicken, spoiled. They just let it go bad.
Yeah, on purpose.
Just let it spoil. Yeah. So they had it, and they just let it spoil, not feeding their people. Of course, now they don't have medications. Inflation went to 4,800% or higher. The Venezuelan bolivar is worthless. And man, I still have family there. I would like for some involvement from an outside entity because I don't see millions of people marched and it didn't make a difference.
Nothing changed.
Supposedly, go ahead. A president won an election there, but
and he's in Miami
as the president.
Yeah, he's in Miami right now,
and he's in Miami waiting for something to happen so that he can be recognized as a president. And of course, a lot of people. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say it might be because obviously I don't have anybody close to me. Obviously living in my household or that I'm married to that is Venezuelan, so I don't know how that went down as much as I've been paying attention to this whole Cuba thing over the last week. But I'm lost for words. She doesn't want to be on camera just because she hasn't done her makeup. Right. But she'd tell you a lot better than I would. The crap that goes on and how
she could talk off camera.
You have to just watch the video.
She could talk off camera if you're listening to it.
You want to get on, babe?
She was already on camera. Tell her she's fine. What is she trying? Look, you know what her problem is? Her problem is her ESPN eyebrows? And Rachel Nichols and the Maria Taylor problem, okay? Rachel Nichols is 47 years old and she's not a racist. Unfortunately, she's being pushed out of ESPN because she doesn't look like she's 27. It's not because she's...
I don't want to get too far off topic, but I thought that Rachel Nichols thing was way overblown.
Yes, we agree.
Yeah. That's exactly what we talked about.
Who wants somebody coming for their job?
Nobody.
No, it was management.
She was management. Saying, "Look, I think she's great."
Yeah. It was that had nothing to do with.
She said
it had nothing to do with race. Like I said, look, real quick, just to jump back to your wife, right? She can talk off camera. Just the odd. There. Oh my God! Don't come in that way.
That's a little creepy.
That's a little creepy.
Don't do that. That's
first, don't come in from under the desk.
Annabelle shit.
Yeah, fuck Conjuring type shit. Look,
it's because I'm in the other room listening, text messaging. I'm like, mention this, mention that.
Look, I thought my comment at the beginning of the show was going to bring you in.
Turn your camera a little bit.
Sprinting in.
Turn your camera a little bit so we can.
No, I purposely hide my face so that not everybody notices that I'm like in my PJs with no makeup.
Don't even worry about it. Look, you better than anybody.
Have you seen Ben? Come on.
Exactly. This is what I just do this shit normally all the time. Hey, look, you better than anybody, I think, can really give a voice and an understanding to the things going on with Cuba. Because first off, whole family's Cuban, grew up in Miami your whole life. Your parents.
He was born in Cuba.
He was born in Cuba.
He came in a raft.
He came in a raft.
Yeah, so you more than
I
anybody.
won't hold that against you.
He's Venezuela. Don't listen to him.
Yeah.
So look, give us.
You can still smell the salt water on me.
Same struggle, man.
You were probably just at the beach. What do you think? What do you think about everything going on? Because look, in our lifetime, I can't think of this ever happening, right? Like we've seen like some people, some kind of protests at some point, but never in Cuba, right? Because the fear of everybody being killed, the fear of what the repercussions were, for them to do this, man, it shows like how much worse it's gotten over the last God knows how many years. Because this didn't just happen yesterday, right? It didn't just happen last week. This is for them to step out.
62 years.
Yeah, for them to step out and show their face is utterly terrifying. That's why you risk your life to come here.
Well, I think it's rough because, I listen to a lot about what's going on in Venezuela. And I always tell Danny, I'm like, what Venezuela is going through right now is what Cuba went through 62 years ago. But back then, there was no social media.
Right.
There was no Instagram or a hashtag that you can create for your country. So nobody could hear you cry. Nobody could hear the horrific things that are happening in your country in some little island. Nobody knew anything. So this is after years and years and years of people like vacationing in our country. Rihanna, Kim Kardashian, Ludacris, all these people go to our country. They take super cute pictures with their tobacco in their mouth. And then, they go in their Havana Nights outfit. And then like the people that are surrounding them are literally starving to death.
Yeah.
They're not allowed to even talk about how much they dislike their country. When I would go to Cuba, all my cousins would say, don't trust anyone. If anybody from our block comes up to you and asks you, oh, how do you like it here? You always say, I'm having a great time.
That's crazy.
And literally every time I would go to Cuba, they would ask me, a random person, oh, how do you like this country? You like it better than the US? You think the US is a good country? And they would start like trying to get me to say something negative about Cuba so that they could arrest me, so that they could kick me out of the country. And literally it's their neighbors. It's the people who work with you. You don't know who's your neighbor or who's working for the government. You
That's
don't know
because
anything.
of spies, right? Like, I mean,
yes,
spies embedded within the community.
because they plant them in your own neighborhood.
Right.
My understanding.
It wouldn't just affect you. It would affect, if you still have family there, then
Everybody.
it would affect them. Right.
It would affect everybody. So it was like you constantly live in fear all the time that somebody is going to rat you out. If you have chickens and you're raising them and you kill a chicken, that's illegal. Because even though they're your chickens, they're really not your chicken. They belong to the government.
Yeah.
If you have cows in your farm and they find out you killed your own cow, you go to jail. If you go fishing and you get lobster, prison time. You cannot have lobster in Cuba. So they hide them inside their engines in order to take one piece of lobster home to their families. So it's just, when people talk about the embargo, it's almost an insult to the Cuban people. And I wish people would understand, for a long time, we had to respect other people who were going through things that we could not understand. So we were told, sit down and hear people who are going through things that you cannot understand. And now I feel like it's the Cuban population needs to talk. We need to be heard. We can't, I've talked to people who have insulted me, who have said that how could I defend the United States when the United States is to blame for what's happening in my country? And I'm like, sit down. Like, how could you possibly understand to the extent of what Cubans go through on a regular basis if you've never lived it? You couldn't possibly understand that killing people for thinking differently than you, for eating, for stealing some bread, for the most random things. You can't do anything in Cuba. That has nothing to do with the embargo. It's an insult to us for people to bring that up as an argument right now.
The people that told you that, they were like Floridians, like people.
That's all social media.
Social media, social media comes with a lot of good and a lot of bad.
Yeah.
And a lot of people who suddenly become experts in
because you can Wikipedia everything.
All they have is the embargo point, right? Like, but the embargo. That's the only talking point they have about Cuba. Like, Cubans aren't self-sufficient. Like people are probably the first time ever when they hear this, they're like, "Wait, there's spies in your neighborhood?" Yeah, motherfucker. Like everybody who comes up, you can't trust a single person for the entirety of your life.
You can't trust anybody.
My aunt was just here a couple of weeks ago. She's Colombian, and she was telling us about when she went and she visited Cuba a while back, and how she was somewhere, and I don't remember why, but a Cuban lady opened her house to her, and she's like, "Hey, you can come in and you can eat here," and then she spent a lot of time inside there, and then she was explaining to my aunt
she has to keep the door open.
She has to keep the door open, right? One, so that they don't think that they're having some type of secret meeting,
right?
And two, if anybody asks, she's like a family friend, right? Like you can't just randomly do whatever you want. And when I say you can't do whatever you want, you can't even have somebody come into your house just to have a conversation and just close the door and have a good time. Like you're being watched all the time. Supposedly, I mean, I don't know how accurate this is. Maybe this is just something that they've kind of made people fearful of. But they're supposed to be spies on literally every block.
Yeah.
And is that possible? I think it's probably not possible to have it literally on every block of the whole country, but you don't know.
But sometimes, you know why it's possible? Because when you imagine spies, you imagine American trained spies.
Yep. No.
But everyone is a spy.
Yeah.
Because when you're hungry enough, you become a spy.
Yeah.
Which is what happens in Venezuela.
When you have children and your children haven't had any food in 30 days and your baby doesn't have any milk, you become a spy because you're hungry, because your family's hungry. Because you'll do anything to feed your family.
They give you a little bit.
You have these rations, but we'll give you a little bit more.
Exactly. You get this, you get that. But you know, you tell us what's going on in your city. Everybody becomes a spy. Yeah. Can you really blame anybody? Sometimes I try to understand, because what if I was with Olivia and Jackson in Cuba and my children were starving? Would I do everything possible to feed my children? 100%. I don't know. Would I become a spy? I don't think so.
Yeah.
But you know, I always try.
We say that now from our point of view. But I have my oldest son is in the military now, and he's left the house. But I mean, look at it from when they were younger. Have 2 kids and a wife, and someone tells me that I'd like to say that I wouldn't become a spy, but it's either that or if you don't become a spy, because it's an option. If someone comes with that,
it's not really a choice. You do everything
and putting you in a corner. So you become a spy, they're gonna make it difficult for you.
So I always try to use common sense. I always try to see other people's point of view and always try to understand what could have caused that person to become that way. Mm-hmm. But I will tell you, it's like very insulting, and it's hard. Right now my parents both passed. And now my sister and I have taken the responsibility of kind of taking care of our family in Cuba. And it's ridiculous because they get paid in pesos. And then you go to the grocery store, for example, and a soap will be $3. But they don't make $3. They make 30 pesos in a month. So then that's like 90 pesos for a bar soap. So how do you shower? And it's the same thing. I would go to Cuba and my family would be like, we haven't had soap in a month. We don't have toothpaste. So they would like, share with their neighbors. You give me half a soap and I will give you the eggs. So for that month, nobody eats
money
eggs.
Over there or any kind of supplies. Are you able to get money to Cuba or food or anything?
Oh, yes. The U.S. government, the Cuban government loves that.
That's the thing.
As a person, can you get it to your people? To your
that's their biggest import is family.
That's how they survive, by Cuban ties, because we send money over there, and they're like, "You send $30." They're not giving your family $30.
But how much does your family get? Does your family get any of it? Half of it?
I guess like 50% of it. That's maybe half of it.
Which is the same thing with the embargo or the opening up relations, right?
Because I don't know the specifics of the dollar amount, because right now the only thing I'm giving my families are recargas on their phone. Mm-hmm. So what they do is that it's called a recarga, but I guess in English the best way to put it is recharge.
Yeah.
So you send money so that they can use their phone for that month. But what they do is that Cubans are efficient. They have figured out a way to use that money, have internet service, and then they sell 50% of that money. And then they're able to buy rice. They're able to buy bread. They're able to buy stuff like that with the money that I put on their phones.
That's crazy.
But if you don't have family in Cuba, you're dying. You don't have anybody.
In the United States.
Yeah, I'm sorry, in the United States.
What that comment, that comment you made earlier about people telling you like on social media, I'm not telling you like, shut up or sit down. I go back to Levitard and the conversation they had about with Billy Corbin and what's going on in Cuba, and he's a documentary filmmaker, but people outside of Miami
don't care,
right? Yeah, he made the Cocaine Cowboys, stuff like that. So people outside of Miami that don't really know. I think back they talk about a survey that happened when the whole Elian Gonzalez stuff happened,
72 to 28.
And within South Florida, everyone was like 75% or more, like even way more than that. They're like, yeah, no, leave him here. Leave him in Miami with his family. They're a estranged family, but it's his family because we know the situation back in Cuba. Everyone outside of Florida or South Florida was, no, send him back to his father because that's what he needs to be. That's the disconnect as far as like, the rest of America and Miami and South Florida and what's going on in Cuba. Same thing with, what's going on in Miami. And like you said, that happened in Cuba 50 years ago, 60 years ago. And we're seeing more of it because of, and we're talking about Venezuela and Cuba because that's personal to us, but it's going on in other countries around the world.
In Nicaragua, what's going on right now also.
Yeah.
And
but yeah, it shows such a disconnect between like the people that see it and then the rest of America that it doesn't connect. We talked about like the news. We don't get that news here, like local news in Ohio, as far as like what's going on in Cuba or goes in Venezuela. That's national news. But people here, though they do watch national news, they're just waiting for their local news. What's going on in Cleveland, what's going on in whatever part of the city.
But I think that's like very normal for our society. We live in a society where we get bored quickly.
Yep.
There was like this, what was it, a few years ago that was happening in Africa? The children were being kidnapped and everybody put on their hashtags and they turned their pictures into like a red dot, and it was
like a week.
For like a week, and everybody was like, oh, we're gonna go and we're gonna save the children. Did anybody go and save the children?
No.
And then we all forgot about it.
And then we all forgot about it.
That's been going on. That's been
going
on
that happened
for
in
years.
Venezuela a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Same thing.
So I feel like just in general, we just have a short attention span. We get bored quickly because we feel like these events are movies. It's almost like, oh, I'm watching a show.
Yeah.
But it isn't. This is real life.
Yeah.
What's the next episode?
That's what
What's the next thing?
To most people. The next day is like, oh, what's new? What else?
Do I get to skip the intro?
What's the next flag I'm putting on my profile picture?
Yeah. It and that's what worries me. And I know it sounds fucked up and careless, but I think that's what's gonna end up happening here, right? When like the next premiere of a new episode happens for the next thing, people are gonna forget all about Cuba. You know what I mean? And that's
exactly what's already happening.
Yeah, it's gonna happen. It was like, oh, like, and again, like being removed, like growing up in Miami, growing up in South Florida, and all that stuff is like, it's very different than like where I live now. It's like, yeah, it doesn't seem real, right? It does feel that way when you're not.
Aren't you half Cuban, Ben?
I am half Cuban. My dad's Cuban. He left. He moved to Panama when in Mariel. Instead of coming to the U.S., he came here real quick, got his citizenship, then moved to Panama. He just thought it was more cost effective. We could talk about that at a later date. Why he moved to Panama?
Right.
That's questionable at best. But
and not to cut you off real quick. Somebody brought up, they're like, oh, but how come the U.S. got involved in Panama back when Noriega was running things?
Money. I was there when that happened.
Different.
Yeah, I was there.
It was completely different.
Yeah. So what happened there was more so about the navigation and the ownership of the Panama Canal, and having all that business that was going to come through it. Not knowing like the history of it, especially like my uncle was like the right hand man of Manuel Noriega in the military. So knowing that whole side of it was very much so like I was there when the U.S. invaded, which is a very weird thing to like hear like bombs dropping in your country and all that shit. Like I was so when that happened, it was very much so political, and they didn't want another person to rise because where he was positioned, right? Like Cuba is very much so like a wedge topic for politicians, right? Like they can talk about it, but it doesn't really affect them, right? Like a Marco Rubio, anybody, it doesn't affect them. Like they could talk about, they could go spoon feed them. Oh, look, I'm a Republican. You should be Republican because of this, but you're really not going to make a difference. And Democrats are the same way. I'm just going to talk about it in this like overall way, but I'm really not going to do anything to fix it. We'll just debate the embargo for like 2-3 minutes, but then we're really not going to do shit or give you any kind of solution. With Panama, the reason why they moved so quickly was money and position. Like if Manuel Noriega takes over that canal,
because it affected them.
Exactly. If Noriega takes over that canal, the U.S. can't take over that position. They don't have English-speaking schools that they already had, and you throw in the Colombian ties to it with the narcos, where they're like, oh no, we can't have that. He beat too powerful. Where if he locks, where he locks down that canal, it's a totally different animal. That's why he. But then if you look at it,
well, that's the issue with Cuba, though.
Right, but
you know, my thing, I always, like I said, I suffer from like common sense syndrome.
Yeah,
because I feel like not many people have it.
It's a terrible disease.
Careful.
Yeah.
Be careful what you say next.
No, I know. I'm gonna be very careful what I say.
Her name's not here.
Don't worry. I try to understand that not everybody cares about Cuba.
Yeah.
And I get it, you know? If you're not from Cuba and you don't have family and friends from Cuba, how could you possibly know what's happening in Cuba, and why would you care? So I always understand, like when I talk to people and they don't really even know the first thing about Cuba, I don't blame them for not like championing again with me for Cuba.
Right.
All I ask is that people who have benefited from Cuba should speak out about Cuba. If you have gone and had an Instagram photo shoot in Havana for your Instagram, bitch. You should be championing for Cuba.
Bitch.
Or at least hit that share button.
Yes. At least share information about the country that you stayed in.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Because a lot of people, a lot of influencers, they go to Cuba, they take beautiful pictures in hotels in Havana, acting like they're buying from the people. Well, you're buying from that person on the street. It's not for them. It's for the government because they're not allowed to own a business.
Yeah.
So all I ask is that people who go to Cuba and vacation there and meet the people and eat those amazing meals at restaurants and hotels in Havana, in tourist areas, they speak out because they've been there. And it's shameful for you to have pictures on your Instagram visiting a communist country.
Glorifying it.
Where people live in horrible conditions and you've benefited from it.
I think it's ignorance also.
It's ignorance.
Because they don't realize, like for you to comment and post about how I was
It's
shocked.
willful ignorance. It's too easy.
I was
It's willful though.
And
they know, but they're like, oh, it doesn't really affect me. Yeah.
It doesn't really affect me. I take pictures. Rihanna, Kim Kardashian, Jay-Z, Beyonce. I could name dozens of
Fast and
famous
Furious
people
filmed
who
the
go to
fucking
Cuba
movie there.
But
so just say something. Say something about the people that you got to meet. Talk about them because those people need world attention, and people like you have the influence. I can't do it.
Yeah.
Nobody's listening to me on social media.
Danny's itching to say something though.
No, it's just that
he did one of these, so it was serious.
When I talk about ignorance, I feel like I've been here for 20 years, right, in Miami.
Right.
So I feel like obviously after I met her, I found out a lot more about Cuba.
Of course.
But even before then, I've been around so many Cubans that I knew about the oppression going on over there. But I feel like it might be ignorance across. This is a big country, you know, like people in Washington State have no idea what's going on in Cuba, I would assume.
No.
Right. So when I hear about people going to Cuba and doing these things, I just assume, and I could be wrong, that they don't realize the conditions that people live in. When I see people post on Instagram or Twitter or whatever about the medical care in Cuba, because everybody gets it, it's a joke.
Yeah.
Free healthcare.
Yes, everybody gets it, but have you seen it?
Yeah, exactly. 100%.
Like if you're all getting a piece of shit, you're getting a piece of shit. Everybody's getting it, but it's a piece of shit regardless.
It's not the same as free healthcare in Canada, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, Canada did a little better.
Yeah.
So it just makes no sense to me the way that people talk about this thing. And now that we're on there, I know you were a big. Jenny and I supported the movement last year, right?
Is this your attempt at a segue?
Yes. This is my
no. Don't leave.
No, she's out.
In the picture.
No.
Yeah. Come on, Jenny, stay in.
Because when you support a movement, you support it and you hope that it works out.
Right.
But then when that same movement comes and kind of
shits the bed,
it disappoints you. You.
Yeah.
Right. Like you're like, whoa, why did I support you to this level? And then you're gonna come around and do some dumb shit like that. Like you still kind of support the movement, but man, the heads of that movement really shit the bed, like you said.
100%.
And it's disappointing because it kind of takes away from it. It almost it's dividing.
Yeah,
it is dividing.
It's dividing because some of the people that supported you kind of like, okay, so you don't support us or her, right? Because I'm not Cuban.
Well, no, don't think about me. Think about the people who live in Cuba, because Cuba is all races. Cubans don't all look like me.
No,
Cuba is.
It's just like a lot of Latin American countries,
half Cuban.
with the exception of
person
maybe
who
Argentina.
started,
half Cuban, right here.
the person who started the Cuban movement at this moment is an Afro-Cuban.
Yep.
So he started it, and we have dozens that are currently arrested. So I think that maybe they should just be more careful with their wording, because in the process they might not be supporting their own, their own people, the people that they say that they care about, the people that they stand for, because those people are being oppressed in Cuba.
Yeah.
Fidel Castro, El Che, concentration camps, killed people, hung them, raped them, put them in prison,
cut them up and
for
put them
those
in all
specific
different
reasons,
countries,
just
all
for the
crazy
color
things.
of their skin. And yet I see people wearing their faces on their shirts all the time. And I think, how foolish do you look to wear someone's face that oppressed your own people? How could you wear them on your shirt?
Yeah.
It must be that you don't know the history.
Colin Kaepernick is a joke.
That's the effect of.
Hey, by the way, I had an
propaganda.
El Che. Back when I was like 16, I had a shirt of El Che.
Of course he does.
And I wore it.
Of the Che?
And I wore it to my friend's house to piss off his father, who's Nicaraguan, just to see what he would tell me.
You did it on purpose.
Oh no, I did it on purpose.
I was telling Jenny that when I was younger, I considered getting a Che shirt because it was popular. I had no idea who the hell that guy was.
I had to be educated.
My understanding, some type of revolutionary, whatever. Okay, that's cool. I'm in high school.
Yeah, but then you read what he did.
Yeah.
And I didn't find out. I never bought it. I don't know why I didn't buy it, but I didn't find out for years later.
It was marvelous.
What a dick.
It was great design. It's his face. The guy had just.
I try to be really careful how I word things, but that's the honest. I see it all the time.
I didn't say he was marvelous. I said the face on a shirt. His face was made to go on a shirt. Look, I'm making light of it, but the guy, what he did, he was a revolutionary, sure, but then when you read into what he did,
in the name of the revolution,
right?
He was a genocide.
It wasn't for the revolution. It was because he was a sociopath.
Yeah, the guy was a genocidal motherfucker. He was a disgusting human being.
Yes,
and it was.
Let me tell you, I sketch, so I see what people paint all the time. Like, I look at art a lot. You would be baffled by how many people paint this guy. How many people sell his face on their art. They create shirts of him. They sell paintings. I've seen sketches of him, acrylic, oil paintings. And I'm like, why would you ever idolize this man? This man was super evil, but it's just ignorance. Ignorance in the name of, socialism or what you consider a revolution. But maybe they should become a little bit more educated on the things that he did, so you don't wear someone like that on your shirt.
But Jenny, I'll say it's that sounds easy, right? But when it's making you money, it's so hard to do that Google search. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like it's so hard. And when you start seeing and even if you do Google, it's like but it doesn't really affect me. So why should I really? You know what I mean? Like,
but then you shouldn't stand up for what you say you stand up for.
Look, you know why?
Right,
why people are going to do it? Because the guy from the Proud Boys,
the guy from the Proud Boys, I understand what you're saying, Trump but stuff. Ain't nobody becoming a millionaire for one T-shirt.
No, or one painting.
I'm not disagreeing with you. Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
Who was banned from like selling? The Proud Boys is a conservative group. They say they're not political. They say they're something else. But they were heavily involved.
The Proud Boys.
Yeah, they were heavily involved with what happened January 6th and everything else. What has he been doing? Because he was banned from these payment gateways. Instead of selling pro-Trump and conservative stuff, Ben, what has he been selling?
He's been selling anti-Trump and
anti-Trump stuff.
Yeah.
He doesn't give a shit. He just
it's money, bro. Like it's money.
So everything against Blue Lives, anti-Trump, but he's selling all that pro-left,
and he's a snitch.
Liberal stuff
and he's a snitch. And he's a snitch. Yeah.
So I think it's a lot simpler than just like, let's get educated. Like I think we can.
You know what the thing is?
But if it makes you money, you just you make that choice. You make that switch. It's like
you make that compromise of humanity.
Cash. Yeah.
Have you met anyone that made money off of selling a swastika on their shirt?
I'm sure they're.
What about Hitler? Does it make money? I'm sure there's a huge I'm sure
but have you seen it?
The problem isn't that they make money off of it. The problem is that you wear it because you think it represents something.
Right.
Because you're wearing it in the name of change. You're wearing it in the name of progress. Because you're a progressive. Because you're a liberal. Because you're a left. Because you believe that these are ideals that I should pursue because they stand for what I believe in. You
without knowing
what you believe in because you don't know what you're wearing.
Absolutely. I was just speaking from the creator's point of view.
Yeah,
and these
from
people
the
that make it and
creator's side
decide to sell it, they're like
far worse is what the people who wear it.
Yeah.
Because why are you wearing it?
The people that
I think the people that decide to make it, they make that choice.
I'm against it, but you do what you got to do to make money to feed your own. But shame on you for wearing it. Don't buy that. There's a market for everybody.
I think
there's a market. There's a market for the worst human beings on earth.
Like Jonathan said, people will buy that swastika shirt.
100%. People will buy some wild shit.
But I think you should condemn the people that made it. Fuck that.
Yeah, absolutely. But they'll still be around.
I think we grew up in a very specific area in the country, right? Where we have. I thought the shirt was. I remember seeing the shirt too. I was like, oh, that shirt. I didn't even know who that was when I first saw the guy's face.
I thought it was cool. I thought he had a cool mustache.
I was like, oh, okay.
It was
not sure why he has a beret
with the black outline.
I was like, I'm not sure why he has a beret.
The color olive. I thought it was awesome.
I was like, I get it.
Like,
when you find out
through the screen and punch me in the face.
Yeah,
you know what? Maybe I'm not mad that some guy in Tennessee is wearing his face.
But
I will be mad that some 100%. Famous guy with a hell of a lot of influence is wearing his face. Yeah. Because if you can make money off your influence, if you become rich and famous off your influence, you hold responsibility. Danny always tells me, oh, these poor people don't get to live their lives because they're rich and famous. I'm like, you know what? That's why they're rich and famous. Yeah. That's why they get to live those great lives. Mm-hmm. That's why they get to have yachts and boats and live in mansions with 14 bathrooms, because who the hell needs 14 bathrooms?
Honestly.
So you know what I mean? Good. If you get to live that way, then you need to be responsible for the things you do because they count.
I mean, I might need 14 bathrooms. I guess sometimes
you got enough
stairs.
I
don't think anybody
and you got too many stairs.
14 bathrooms.
He's got too many stairs.
This guy was 30 stairs.
He has 3 floors.
I grew up in Miami, man, and so I know I'm aware of maybe not as much as you. Obviously, you were born in Cuba and you came over, but if you grew up in Miami, there is no way that you can't be aware of what's going on with the Cuban people, right? Mm-hmm. I think what I was bothered by, and I was like, fucking more Cuban. I was like, another Cuban person. I run into another Cuban person. It was, and what bothered me is just I think the politics in Miami and so many like corrupt politicians, and they all happen to be Cuban. I'll say the majority are Cuban, maybe not all, but the majority are Cuban. And we were talking about like Rubio and other politicians, and now
Francis
the mayor
Suarez
in Miami, who's the son of a previous corrupt mayor in Miami.
Yep.
Like, do they really want anything to actually happen in Cuba, or do they just want to have that issue constantly so they can use it as political like capital?
It's
crazy to say, but I don't think they actually want anything positive to happen, even though it's their own people. Like, I don't think they actually want anything to happen. I think they want that issue to be there so they can use it.
I could be wrong, obviously, but I really feel like this situation
calls to them because they're Cuban.
And not just that, it calls to a human being. Like, I know people are like very passive about it, right? But like, if you sit somebody down, you explain what's happening and you show them a video, like, you're like, man, this is rough.
Yeah,
like,
but it's also because they're Cuban, so they have probably.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, if you talk to just a random person and show them this stuff, this is heavy stuff. Like, wow, like they're missing their basic human needs. Like, it's not being given to them. You show that to a Cuban person, you don't have to show it. Actually, they already know. Like, right. I feel like this goes past politics for the Cuban community.
But I think it benefits. Let me tell you, it benefits Republicans because it is not easy being me in a very Republican family. Because I lean left. I have always leaned left. I consider myself an independent,
Cuban
but I lean left.
I've heard always. Of that leans left.
I have a difficult time.
I've met 2 other Cubans in my life.
Sometimes, I have a difficult time sometimes understanding what it is the Republicans, are saying. Sometimes I disagree with them often. So it's not always easy at the dinner table to sit in a house of Republicans. And Cubans, majority are Republican.
Yeah.
It gets passed down, just like with anything. It gets passed down.
It gets passed down. They talk to you about the Bay of Pigs since you are a child.
The big
they
one.
left us and you are like bred to hate Democrats, and you know everything they stand for. And I have always stuck my ways. But I can tell you that as an independent who leans left, it is hurtful. It is hurtful because the left is very quiet about this. And the right isn't. The right is backing up the Cuban. Is it a political move?
100%. Yeah. I mean, they got to double down on
a political move.
It wins them the state if you win Miami.
Absolutely. Yeah. They're like, you know, they have to say that, look, this is what socialism does. You see, we stand with the Cuban people because we do not stand for socialism. But if I'm a left, if I'm a Democrat, I'm doing the same. I'm a Democrat and I believe in freedoms and I believe in this and this, but I'm also against communism. I stand against communism. That is wrong. Where you
but
at?
That's just talk.
Say it.
But that's just talk on the right.
But that goes back to what we were saying about Donald Trump last year. Condemn the neo-Nazis. Just say it. We're just waiting for you to say it.
I need you to say it so that I know that your ideals are not at all related to the ones in Cuba. I need you to defend it. You are the party that's right now in the White House. Stand up for it. Say the same thing Biden says. I condemn communism. I condemn it. Why is everybody so scared to say that?
Yeah.
If you don't believe it, don't be scared to say it. Because they're asking Democrats, and what do they say? I am against the authoritarian blah, 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 blah. Why are you scared? Say communism.
You want to say communism or socialism.
I want you to say it. Absolutely. I want you to say it.
Danny's right. With the same way we spoke, we had the backlash.
Same way the left spoke about Trump.
Because the left did it just the same. The left begged Trump, and there were videos. I am not, I'm not pro-Trump. Right. But I'm always in the middle. The left were hard on Trump. Say it.
Oh, yeah.
Say that you are against this. I want to hear you say
80 episodes of this podcast,
and then
all we did was that.
Right, and then a friend of mine that's pro-Trump sent us a video.
Sent us videos.
And it was like 8 minutes long. 8 minutes long of him saying it repeatedly in different places.
So we can't be hypocrites.
Well, there you go. He said it.
You gotta also say it. You gotta say that you are, against this also.
So Biden said it, but
Biden
other Democrats haven't said it. And obviously we have like Democratic socialists in the government, right?
Exactly. And Biden was very smart. Biden said, I am against communism. And honestly, I don't think socialism works very well either, but that's another story. To a person like me, what did that indicate? That the Democratic Party is divided.
Mm-hmm. Well, they have been. We know that because
we know that
because of
we've been watching
this new age of progressives and then the old school of just the same old Democrats that have been in power for 30, 40 years,
50,
years.
60, 70, 80, forever.
Yeah, sure. I mean, Biden is one of those.
50
He's
years.
Been around for a long time.
But I appreciated that he said that because that meant to me, he doesn't agree with that either.
So I'm very cynical.
Oh, okay.
Because to me, whether it's Biden, whether it's the Republicans,
what does it
it's
mean?
just talk. To me, I'm a cynical person, and I'm glad that most people on this planet aren't like me because
you're a terrible person. Yeah,
circumstances, life experiences. I'm a piece of crap of a human being. Life experiences. Thanks, Danny. I'm glad that you see greatness. I have grown not to trust people. My first instinct is to shut your mouth, not to look at the logo. We're the same height. It's not to trust people. That's my first instinct. And and as a society, we could not grow or move forward if we didn't trust each other, right? Like that's the first instinct. So I don't trust people. I don't trust people because you might say great things, whether you're a Republican or Democrat. That means nothing. And that's why, like, I go back to like, I understand, like, I see the Cuban plight, but I get so pissed with like what I saw as far as Cuban, like growing up in Miami with everything with the politics there. But even now, like, I think that these politicians are
even if they're Cuban,
they're using absolutely.
And I think they're talking and what they say sounds good, but I don't think that they're not taking any action. They're not.
There's no policy. There's no bill.
Do anything.
And what means that I don't even think they want any change. I think they want to speak because that sounds good, saying I'm against this, I'm against that. But I don't think that they want the situation to actually change. Marco Rubio has done a really good job of presenting some points. When he went to Washington, again, I've never been pro Marco Rubio, but when he went to Washington, he didn't tell Biden once, go into the country, free the people. It's not once. That's tough.
He didn't say that. Yeah. All he said were common sense things that people wanted to do. figure out a way to give internet from my 90 miles away, which can be done.
Yes.
So he put that on the table. Let's help them at least get internet so that they can communicate with each other. Because right now in Cuba, on their TVs, what they see on their TVs right now is that around the world, they're having pro-communist rallies.
No, not only that, so they can see what's going on.
State-sponsored
TV. But what's going on in the rest of the world. What they can,
exactly.
So they can see what's going on in the rest of the world.
I appreciated that he was coming out with solutions that didn't involve World War III. He was coming out with common sense solutions that I felt could be done. Because again, I understand the common sense that some things cannot be done. I get why maybe the US cannot go into Cuba. I understand how complex what that would mean. So I tried to see it in a point of view that I went to a rally like a few days ago, and the cops put us on the sidewalk.
Yeah,
but they put us on the sidewalk because there wasn't enough of us. There wasn't an abundance of thousands of people that would stop traffic.
There was only a couple hundred.
There was only a couple hundred. So what did the police do? The police put us on the sidewalk, and then they kind of like blocked us in. It was like a brick wall of cops. Yeah. They were really nice people. They weren't bothering me. Yeah. And when you would talk to them, they would tell you, hey, I'm just doing my job. I was put here to protect you because we have to let cars pass. So we're kind of putting a blockade between you and the cars. What did the Cuban people next to me scream? Comunista! You guys are communists. This whole country. You guys are communists just like, you know, the president. Yeah. Common sense told me that's not what's happening, guys.
Yeah.
These are just cops doing their jobs.
Yep. And the worst possible position.
It's a very emotional time.
It's a very emotional time, and I get it. But I also try to see common sense things. So
it's hard to separate that in the heat of the moment too. Like it's hard to actually think through things because we get too emotional, too attached to things that are going on. Obviously, we're close to it.
Pots and pans and shit.
Oh my gosh! And the cops were there. Like there was a cop that was like, "I wish I could be marching there with you, but I'm doing my job."
That cop was probably Cuban. He should have turned around and been like, "Look, lady, I'm fucking Cuban too, but I'm doing my job."
For sure.
Yes, that's what I was telling them. I was like, half of these cops are Cuban too. They probably want to be here with you, but they're doing their job.
Yeah,
they're doing their job, and it's not against you. They're just doing their job. They were given an order and they're following through with it.
But I will tell you, I understand why those people marching were upset because let me tell you something.
It killed them all.
A march and a protest that's just chilling on the sidewalk, it's not as effective as one that's taking up the whole street.
The whole Palmetto or the whole Palmetto.
Yeah, we were like walking through.
Yeah.
We were walking through like restaurants. People were like eating churrasco and we were like, Viva Cuba! It was just very ineffective.
Yeah. So once they put everybody on the sidewalk,
that's what it was. Churrascos
and the waiters are trying to like walk through us.
Look, not to make too much light of it, but we saw a restaurant where we were walking. They were like, "Oh, we gotta come back here."
Yeah.
So like it kind of ruined it because it kind of took your focus a little bit off.
A little bit off. You can't hear with the person screaming at the top of the line.
I mean, we're gonna go back one of these days because I want to eat some of that mofongo.
Yeah.
So. There's a damn drink named after it. There's a Cuba Libre, rum and coke.
It looks really fire, honestly. So we'll go back.
They got some pastelitos over there. I want to go. Fuck it. But y'all march through here.
He said the key word, mofongo.
Yeah, we ended up stopping like at Azúcar to get ice cream for the kids because the kids were tired.
If it came a day out. You're trying to be political activist.
Very ineffective.
Yeah, man, I'm telling you, it really killed it. So again, that goes back to we were trying to think logically, like these people are just doing their job.
They're just doing their job.
But I understand somebody that maybe still has family over there, maybe their parents, even their kids. A lot of people have their kids over there.
Well, I still have family.
What? Yeah, but their siblings. I'm talking about like your parents or your children. Like you feel even more emotional in those cases.
Yeah.
And I feel like I can't do anything. All I can do is march. That's all I got.
Yeah, that's all you got.
So I need it to be as effective as possible.
And that lasted.
And when you go and you're like, this is all I can do. I'm gonna do it the best I can. Yeah. And they move you to the sidewalk. I feel like
it hurt.
It's frustrating. You're like, this is all I can do, and you're not even letting me do this.
Yeah.
So I understood.
Like you're insignificant. Let's move over to the side.
Yeah. Your pain is inconvenience. Yeah. Your pain is inconvenience.
That's what it felt like.
Yeah.
But like we were trying to tell people, like if we would have had 1,000 and 2,000 people show up, we don't fit on the sidewalk. They wouldn't have made us get on the sidewalk.
And they told us that. The cops that were there, they were like, if it's a lot of you, we are forced to close down.
At that point, it's more of a danger to you.
Because there wasn't enough of you.
Right.
Yes, that's what they were saying. They were like, we're here protecting you so that you don't get hit by a car. Right. But the people marching felt like it was a direct attack on them.
Yeah.
So it was wrong.
What's crazy is that you're talking about all this and you're right. I'm still thinking about Mofongo. I need to go to the there's a Puerto Rican slash Colombian owned restaurant like 25 minutes from here. I'm having some Mofongo on Saturday before my wife flies out.
Jenny, you said
Colombians in
there's like 3 of them and he's it. He feels
there are Colombians in Cleveland.
Yeah.
There's more Puerto Ricans, but there's Colombians in Cleveland.
Yeah. Not many.
Hey, stop hating.
Sorry. Jenny, you were saying that it's already starting to change, like the trend of people getting losing their focus on the whole Cuba thing. What's going on down there? Well, sounds weird because I'm only like 3-4 hours away and it's a totally different world. What's going on down there now that people are shifting their focus to?
Well, you live in the Blair
because the biggest problem that we have right now is that we've lost communication with video footage of what's happening in Cuba.
Out of sight, out of mind.
So there's some internet, but there's not a lot of videos coming out of what's currently happening. And then the Cuban government has made it a point to push out propaganda at all times on the news.
Right. Yep.
So what they're showing is nobody's coming to help you. You're all alone. In fact, look at these pro-communist marches that are going on around the world against you. Now, if you are someone who has family in the US, you have a phone. So you can hashtag, somebody crying? You can hashtag SOS Cuba and you see what's happening. But if you don't have family there that can send you a phone or pay to recharge your phone, then all you depend on are the news. The news is telling you no one's coming. No one's going to help you.
Government propaganda.
No one's going to help you. The Venezuelan government is here. They have armed a bunch of cities already. Everyone's home. Everyone's tired. There's no food in the supermarkets. There's nothing. So what we are reporting or the information that we're passing around is already news from a week ago, because there are no new video footage of them marching, because a lot of them have gone home. They're tired. They're hungry.
They're terrified.
What do you do when you have to feed your child and you're trying to do a revolution, but there's no food anywhere? They have stopped giving you food. No more water. You want to revolt? You want to have a revolution? No more water. No more light. No more food. No more eggs. No more 6 eggs a month. You have nothing. What do you do? If you get injured, you can't go to the hospital. The hospital has been told not to help anyone who has been injured. So that means that if you were out and you were marching and you got hurt, you go home. You go home to die, because there's a soldier in front of every medical area, any medical place, any ER, because there are no ERs, but whatever you want to make it count as one over there. Any hospitals, there's a soldier in the front that checks everyone who comes in. If they feel that you have been injured related to a march, you don't get help.
And they could just make that decision.
Includes kids.
Yeah. They just make the decision
for them to make. They make the decision based on whatever they feel.
They don't give a fuck. Yeah, they just said,
like, you know how we were talking about Cuban. There's been like a few videos of Cuban police officers putting their arms down. I'm done. I don't want to keep doing this. I quit. That's great. But what do you do with Venezuelans? Venezuelan armed forces are in Cuba. They don't care. They don't care about what the Cuban people are going through, because they are probably trying to feed their own family.
It hurts.
Yeah.
It hurts. But you know what? The Cuban people did it to you.
No, yeah. There's Cuban people embedded in the
Cuban armed forces did it to your people.
Yeah,
and they did it because they were hungry.
That link is so it's so
strong.
Crazy.
The link
Those
between
countries
Venezuela
are so
and Cuba
tied together.
You have thrown Russia in there too, right?
And they're the
power and effective.
Yeah, destroying. Yeah, they're destroying their people. They're killing their people.
Oh,
and again, I mean,
yeah. The Olivia's gonna come down here in a few minutes.
Olivia, don't say that. That's my mother's name. I don't want Olivia to come down here.
I hope Jackson slaps you on this podcast, bro. Like
he's a very serious baby.
Look at him. He's smiling.
Dude he's ready to give you what is it? The 2 pieces in the
I think he might be happy.
Soda. He's about to
give like it's like a partial smirk. Right, that's a partial smirk. Look at him. All right.
Biggest smile he's ever given.
You know what's crazy is that growing up in Miami, my complaint wasn't what's going on with Cuba, but what was like all the things that I saw as advantages that the Cuban people coming from Cuba, fresh off the boat, whatever you want to call it.
Dry foot.
That you got 1 foot, 1 dry foot, like you got everything. Oh, okay, we're gonna have all these things set up in place for you, and obviously a lot of people already had family here, so it made it a little bit easier. But like all these things that you see as a young teenager.
But doesn't that kind of
people, and now that's happening with Venezuela, with all these things that are being put in place for Venezuelans, 20 years later, Venezuelan people coming here. So who's like every other nationality, Nicaraguans,
who makes
Panamanians, whatever, they're all saying like these fucking Venezuelans are just coming over here and they can claim asylum. And it'll take 3 to 5 years for an asylum case to be heard, because that's how long the wait is. And they can just, in the meantime, in like 180 days, you get your social security number, you get a permit to work. They can do everything while they wait.
So now like, other countries are like, we know, I know.
Yeah, no,
but that kind of puts it in perspective, right? When they're trying to help other countries that much, the level of oppression, because they're sending everybody back, but there's certain countries that are like, but
not anymore. Not anymore. In Cuba now, if they find it, because when I came in a raft, they found me in the water. I never touched land, and they put me on a boat. They gave me a blanket. They brought me here with a group of 12, and they gave us a hotel room, and they gave us like $50 to go to like a Walmart or whatever. I can't remember at that time what it was called. And we bought socks and we bought underwear, and then they gave us 2 rooms so that the women can sleep in one room and the men can sleep in another.
That's crazy.
So
they were
maybe
amazing,
it was after you came,
now,
because they
don't
did
do that.
They did make it. They did make it to a point where like you had to touch land. Before, like they would, if they intercepted you at some point, then they would bring you in. I guess if you made it into U.S. waters or something.
She got rescued in the water.
Yeah. I remember seeing that stuff on video where they would put like the Coast Guard would have like these the fire hose, and they would like put it on people trying to swim to shore. Like I remember that stuff being on the news.
Yep, I remember that.
As a 12-year-old or whatever it was.
At that time it was different. They asked us, what do you want to do with your boat, or your whatever it was, and my dad was like, burn it, just do whatever you want, sink it. And that's what and we watched it sink right in front of us. So obviously the experience has changed a lot of people have died in the water.
Yeah, one of the biggest graveyards in the world.
They're saying that's going to happen again, right? I've read somewhere and heard somewhere that something like the boat lift, El Mariel, what happened in the 80s, that might be happening again.
To relieve the
I'm
pressure.
totally against that. I'm totally against that, and I'm Cuban, because I know what Cuba does. Cuba does that for fun.
That's how we got Tony Montana.
What they do is that
they're stereotypical. They're going to release the prisoners and send them over here. The worst of the worst.
That's exactly what they're going to do.
That's what Cuba does. Cuba's like, we look bad in front of the news. They're going to go in front of the world, and they're going to go, who said they can't leave? They can all leave. You want to leave? Leave.
That's who they'll send.
What they do, they empty out their prisons, pedophiles, rapists, the worst of people, and then they sprinkle in good people. You have to pay a bunch of money to be on a lottery, or they pick you 1 in a dozen, and you're able to get on that boat. So not
but you're also separated from your family.
Is a bad person.
Yeah.
But a lot of them are, and then they're released to the U.S. all at the same time. 100,000 people, or whatever the number may be, and then the U.S. is stuck with, what do I do with all these people? How do I vet them? How do I find out who's a good guy, who's a bad guy? How do I find out who are the spies? How do I feed all these people? Where do I put them? In Miami Beach? In a hotel?
I'm sure there'll be a paper trail of all the good guys that come over on that.
Yeah, I'm sure
Cuba has great documentation. You know what I mean?
Like I'm sure there will be for those people. I'm sure it'll be like, it's right there. Don't send them back. Keep them in the U.S.
Yeah, right.
Somehow you'll find a trail that shows that they're
why
great
the
citizens.
U.S. might not want that. I agree. That's shit that the Cuban government does to piss
so they
off
did
the
last
US.
time.
And then they'll open up their borders. They're like, go. You want to leave? Go leave.
But that's the purpose. They do that, and then everyone else outside of Miami or outside of us and people that know, they'll be like, look, they'll say the same shit about like what they say about Mexicans, right? Like, or people coming through Mexico. It's just rapists and murderers, and like that's all we're getting. Let's close our borders.
Exactly
we don't
what
need these immigrants.
Say.
That's exactly what
That's exactly what they say, and they don't know that the actual government released the worst of the worst into the boats. They said, go to the U.S. Have fun. So
this has been one crazy conversation. I'm just honored that for episode 200 we got Jackson Granada on the show. He was
He's like, you talking about me?
Like me?
I'm gonna go put him to bed.
He knows your name, Buffy. He knows your name.
That's
Poor
right, man.
baby. He's not.
Thank you guys so much for getting. Look, we could talk about this forever, right? This is something we're all passionate about, especially two communist countries and me escaping Panama when it was being invaded. So we could talk about this stuff our entire lives, and we'll talk about it again. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Just want to cap it off. Danny, I'm glad you brought your wife in because she really saved
Thank
you.
you for having me.
Thank you for coming
I'll
on.
be better prepped.
I know you're good. You're good. Look, I gotta
look
look
wanting to come on the show. Come on,
she's a little raptor. Like who better to have on here?
Jesus.
Oh, you're gonna. All right.
Well, there you go.
Hit him.
I don't know. That's her. On that march we went to, her shirt, she made it for herself. It literally said Balsera.
Yeah.
And proud.
And proud.
I'm proud, as you should be. That's right. Own that shit.
That's a hell of a journey.
That's a hell of a fucking journey.
It's crazy.
All right, guys, we got nothing else.
Well,
thank you guys so much, man. We'll talk soon. Literally right after this. After we stop recording, I'll hit you up, D. Holla, man.
All right.
Peace.
Let's go upstairs.